And we are live. Hold on, I'm trying to pull something up here. It's not working for me.
It does say that we're live.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yep.
Hello, welcome to the Kick-Ass Crowdfunding Show. Wait a minute, wrong show. So welcome to the Modern Day Council. My name is Chris Eishin. I was having technical difficulty, not realizing that this was starting. But today we have with us Eric Lehman of the Game Changer Movement and Thomas Pfeiffer from the Good Men Project. And we're going to talk today about violence, racism, gun control, all of these issues that we've been seeing all over the TV today or lately as a response to last week's shooting in Charlotte, South Carolina. So, or not Charlotte, that was Charleston, South Carolina. Sorry, I go to Charlotte a lot and I go to Charleston a lot, so I get the two mixed up. Eric, one of the things that really motivated me to want to do this episode was your email last week. It seemed like, just like this has hit a lot of us, pretty strongly. The email that you sent out, I could tell that you were really impacted by what was going on. And so, could you kind of share with us like what it was that you were going through last week when this launched on the news and everything, and kind of what you did to handle that, and how you talk to your kids and everything?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still kind of like the emotional roller coaster is still really alive. But I just feel, when the Sandy Hook shootings happened, I didn't really have a real context for that. Like it was the first time I, I shared something of that magnitude as a single father with my kids. But that was, I mean, I still remember it like it was yesterday. Like it was really, really hard to say that this sort of thing could happen. And I guess the difference between Sandy Hook and now is that ever since Sandy Hook, I've been creating the Game Changer movement and actively, trying to make a contribution towards shifting this energy. And so not that I took this event as a personal failure, but it kind of created a re-inspiration that said we still have a lot of work to do, and on the flip side, I guess I've been really impressed with humanity in the aftermath of this, because all of the forgiveness that is being publicized and going viral, and how the families of the folks who are no longer alive are not letting this turn into a fear-mongering event. They're actually having it galvanize us into a larger group of people that is ready to have the harder conversations and not ready to just start fearing everyone based on the color of their skin or any other bias. So, I mean, that's such a huge kind of whirlwind, because, I mean, there's still all this stuff floating around. Like we need to admit that we're nowhere near where we think we are or were in terms of getting rid of racism, and on the flip side, to see Walmart and all these other big box stores just pretty quickly remove the Confederate flag and anything else with that image on it. Images of hate are now being pulled so quickly, and I think the other big thing is that the government is actually the slowest to act, and I think this is another instance of, like, once we depoliticize this, once we actually get underneath the the policy part of things. Once we make it not about gun control, once we make it about how we look at another human being, we're actually pointing out a lot of the holes in and the lag in our current government system. So I mean, I think it's a very big moment, and I don't think people understand the magnitude of what is happening. Is like when Walmart can act more quickly than than the government buildings in South Carolina. There's a challenge there, because Walmart has a profit motive, but I think a lot of the politicians have a re-election motive, and they don't even know what to do. They don't even know, in essence, what their constituency wants them to do. Mm-hmm. So, it's a really alive energy. And, just compared to Sandy Hook, I think, unfortunately, we now understand that shootings are going to happen. It's almost like we've been desensitized enough to know that, to just say, okay, we've sort of been through this before. On the flip side, we're different people than we were last time. So, I mean, I'm impressed. I'm still saddened. This morning I participated in one of the most amazing things I had ever participated in, which was a picture. We took an aerial photograph of a lot of the folks in Ithaca, spelling out the word Charleston, and we met on a football field, and we came together as a community to take this picture. And the crazy thing is, a drone took the picture, So, we're employing all these technologies and all these, things that we're up in arms about in terms of, drones killing other things. But, so, it's so messy and so ready for people like us to just have the real conversations about. So I apologize for, kind of droning on, but, there's a lot, in play right now. So I appreciate you dedicating this episode to this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing that struck me about this shooting as being different from so many of the other ones we've seen is that the shooter is alive. He was caught. And, not so much from the perspective of, okay, so we're going to have a chance to get into the mind of this person and see what was going on and see all that, but just that the model for this event is different. This is not like Sandy Hook. This is not like Elliot Rodgers. It's a whole different type of event, I think, and so I think in a way we have to look at it that way, but it is similar to the others in that what underlies it is something systemic. It's beyond the motivation of one person. It's beyond whatever's going on in a particular individual's head. Because if you look at it, if you had one shooting or two shootings or five shootings over a long period of time, you'd say, okay, we've got individuals who have screws loose. But you do have patterns. You have however many mass shootings you've had, 37 or 62 or whatever. There's quite a large number. We have a Good Men Project article that documents it over time. And so you can start to look at patterns and what's the same and what's different. And I think you can say there is something systemic going on in America about violence as a solution to problems, about notoriety, about all of the kinds of things that go into these events, which then become fairly scripted, and the media has a whole script that they go through. But what is different about this one, I think, is that it didn't fit the murder-suicide pattern. It was more like, the guy did it and he left. And so, to me, that plays into the racism aspect of it, because he felt it it seems to me, based on that he felt really some sense of justification, like, okay, I did this, and I deserve to get away with it. I deserve to walk away from this because these lives don't matter, because my life is more important than these lives. So that's what, to me, then brings it back to the whole Black Lives Matter concept, because what is the systemic problem we have in this country on racism is that in countless ways that a lot of us are unaware of, we reinforce the idea that black lives don't matter, that they don't matter as much as white lives, that these people should be treated differently. I just want to say one other thing about the forgiveness concept that Eric brought up, which is that on the one hand, I think, yes, in order to talk about racism, you don't want to have the situation being volatile when you're talking about it. You want people to come together in a spirit of, we have a problem and we need to solve the problem. But I also think that there's a very strong tendency for blacks, when injustice is done to them, to step up, or even to be pressured to step up and say, we forgive it, we want to move on because, we don't want to have riots, we don't want to make trouble, we don't want to, and part of me says, no, you don't have to forgive that. 9 innocent people were murdered in cold blood, and there was an NPR article thing I was listening to this morning, with the Boston Marathon or a lot of other incidents of murder that don't necessarily involve racism. Nobody's stepping up and saying, we've got to forgive the marathon bomber, we've got to forgive, the Columbine kid, whatever. It's like, but when there's a racial aspect to it, there seems to be this, we have to forgive. And one of the things that really disturbed me is apparently the judge, when he was doing the bail hearing, I didn't listen to the transcript, but apparently he spent almost as much time saying, we need to feel for the family of Dylan Roof as for the families of the 9 people who were killed. And it's not that you don't feel for his family, but there's a perspective, I think, and the families who were really injured, who were devastated, who were destroyed by this, primarily are those families of those nine people who were killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is kind of, I think about the theater shooting guy. I can't think of his name, but when he went, in the Batman movie came out and he did that whole thing, like that was nuts. And they just kind of, every photo that you've seen of him shows him looking like he's crazy, and so they were able to kind of pass that off of, the guy's just crazy. And then I never heard anything much of it after he was apprehended. It's like, okay, well, whatever happened to him, I don't know. I'd have to Google it to find out because I don't see it all over the media. And then it's almost like the media wants to, I don't know, it kind of ticked me off. I watched this one show where they're talking about how it really wasn't racially driven, and then another show was ripping apart the fact that show said it wasn't racially driven, or the reason was based around race, and then then they're just arguing about whether or not it was an act of racism. I'm like, well, either way, it was an act of violence done on somebody, and he's a murderer. Like, can't we just focus on that? And I mean, yes, the fact that it was a racial act matters, but let's quit debating that and let's look at the fact that this happened. Why did it happen? Well, if you look at the media over the past 6 months, it's all about how blacks are unjustly being shot by cops, and so I can understand from his perspective. This guy's perspective is like, they're blaming all these cop shootings on the police, and there's riots and stuff happening and all this stuff. They're just a menace that needs to be dealt with. Well, that's all due to the focus of our media. It's like, what is it? What you focus on, you get more of. It's like we keep focusing on that. We keep talking about those things in the media. It's like, quit. Let's talk about some good things. Let's talk about the positive, or let's talk about what we're doing to change those things in society. And changing our gun laws, I mean, yeah, make it harder to get semi-automatic machine guns or even automatic machine guns and things like that is going to be helpful in these mass shootings. But at the same time, I don't know if I trust our government enough to completely, give up our right to bear those weapons, because now with the type of weapons that exist, it's like, I don't know, it's a really tough argument from both sides as far as I'm concerned when it comes to taking away our gun rights. But then again, some of that stuff does tend to make sense. You don't really need to have a AK-47 to go hunting. So what purpose do those really play in our day-to-day lives? But then again, at the same time, we want to be able to arm ourselves in the event that we don't agree with something going on in our country. And you look at like a movie like Red Dawn, where it's never happened before, but a foreign country comes onto our soil. Like, how would we defend ourselves in that type of a scenario without us having our own weapons? But then again, I don't know. It's just, to me, I think the focus is on all these other things instead of the core issues. The core issues being, what is it that we're doing at home? What are the conversations that we're having? What are the things that we're putting in front of us? Being our media and all that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think teaching kids hate is a much more powerful weapon than a gun.
Mm-hmm.
Because then these kids go out armed with hatred.
Yeah, and don't think about the repercussions.
Gun control is a separate issue from this, I think. I don't think this is specifically about the availability of guns. This is about the prevalence of a belief system, and teaching people a belief system that puts other people down, people who look different from you, that puts those people down and says you're superior to them, and makes that, in a sense, what your life is about. You define yourself. White supremacy is about defining yourself and your role in the world as, because just by virtue of your skin color, you are superior to people whose skin is darker than yours. But when you raise kids who believe that, those are weapons waiting to be fired, in whatever way.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you then add into the mix, any type of instability or, whatever else goes on with people who already have that loaded weapon, that belief system in place, then it gets extremely dangerous.
Yeah. It was interesting. I watched the podcast, or listened to the podcast, WTF with Mark Maron, and he was interviewing Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Which was kind of a interesting thing to see happen, because I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Maron at all, but he's been a comedian forever, for like the past 30 years, and then he started this podcast, and now he's like #1 podcast under the comedy, and he interviews all these famous people in a little garage he has, it's like a shed basically that's been converted into a little studio that he has. So Obama comes to his house and is in this little shed studio. But he was talking about a lot of this stuff, and talking about how this is basically taking this as our government is taking this as an opportunity to get control of our gun laws. So although this isn't necessarily directly related to what's happening, our political system is making those connections, and therefore trying to put laws and things in motion because of this. And then each and every other shooting that you see come out, it's like, oh, it's making us want to push harder for these gun laws. And being from where I'm at, Michigan, there's big hunting, big, I'm from the Detroit area where, what's his name? Musician, big on gun, wants to protect our guns, and our NRA, cat scratch fever. I can't think of it.
Ted Nugent.
Ted Nugent, yes.
Yeah.
Ted Nugent's from around here. Like, this is a big issue about, you can't take our guns from us around my area. So, I tend to. Hold on. That's better, Eric. I tend to see that's what tends to be the issue when these things happen in my area, is that everybody gets all pissed off that the government's trying to use this as a reason to take away the our gun rights, is the way they feel. But I do agree. I think it's more this particular case is a racial thing. It's about how do we as parents handle this, have a conversation with our kids about it. And to me, it's if you're turning on the TV and you're seeing everything that the media is putting out there, and you're just believing that on top of whatever it is that mom and dad are saying, that's going to lead to more of this stuff. So as parents, it's like, how can we limit what our kids are seeing as far as this stuff is concerned? Or how do we have that conversation with them that leads to less of this instead of more? And I keep fighting with that. Like, how do I have a conversation with my 14-year-old about this? I don't know.
Well, maybe we start with, what do we observe in our kids when they encounter race, talk about race, when they hear racist lyrics in songs, when you watch a show with them or whatever it is, and where are they coming from? What are they giving back to us? Because going with the assumption that we're not feeding racism to them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless we're all, to a degree, there's a degree to which almost every white person is sort of blind to some of the very subtle aspects of racism that are kind of built into the culture. But given that, let's assume that we're not feeding racism to our kids, what are they feeding back to us? What are they picking up from popular culture? What are they saying when you drive past a black person, or you're going past a neighborhood that doesn't look so nice, or whatever it is? And even what I just said there, a neighborhood that doesn't look so nice. I mean, that doesn't have to be a neighborhood where black people live. That could just be a neighborhood that's poor, But think about it. There's a very powerful association in everybody's mind. Bad neighborhood, that must be whatever. So,
right.
So it's like you catch yourself. But so I would say, what are the kids giving back to us? And then what can we, in turn, return with and say, what you're saying or what you're hearing or what you're giving back to me has tones of that, has shades of that, or if it goes in this direction, it could be interpreted or seen as being racist. And look, everybody's equal, just like to keep giving back that message.
Mm-hmm. And even to speak to that though, racism, and then part of that's like homophobia, right? Well, right. Then today I just got a thing popped up on my computer, so I figured I'd mention it. It's like the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage in the United States. So that's kind of one step in the right direction as far as the gay community is concerned. And so that's a good thing to see our government go along those lines. I don't know as far as from a political perspective what can actually be done for racism specifically, but there definitely, to your point though there, Thomas, there definitely is some work that can be done in our schools and in our homes.
I don't interrupt, but I mean, I feel like what's so amazing right now is the conversations that we're having, you know, at the barber, you know, or wherever. Like, you know, I mean, I think we're all able to start being real, um, you know, with anyone we bump into, because of social media and all these other things. Like, we all know what's going on in Charleston, and we all know what's going on in the Supreme Court, and we also hear that, like, you know, one justice is, you know, throwing the other justices under the bus. You know, I mean, like, it's a very transparent time and very alive, and, you know, it's really messy, and it's beautifully messy, you know. And I mean, in a way, like, I love that we're able to, you know, be on this forum, and, you know, you know, I'm also, like, happy that I joyfully disagree with a lot of the sentiment that's been shared, you know, during this call, and, you know, I feel like it's great to have a forum that says, okay, you know, these are, like, we all have different lenses that we're looking through when we come to this day, you know. You know, my experience of race and white privilege and all these other, I mean, like, I left that, you know, that picture with the drone, and I just started crying, and I don't even have a name or a meaning or interpretation of my tears right now. Like, I'm just in it, you know. And was it white guilt that made me cry? Was it, you know, like, the question of how do I share white privilege that made me, you know, as caught up in emotion? But, like, I went from that picture to, like, my chiropractor's office, and I'm still, like, bawling, and I don't even know what, like, the world changed, you know, in this one moment, and still, like, you know, what was so interesting is, like, we showed up and we took a picture, and then we all dispersed, you know. Like, what if we actually stayed there and had a real conversation? Like, what could that have done? You know, I mean, what if we made sure that, you know, we weren't speaking from our lenses? Or what if we just, like, checked in with ourselves and really, really identified the lenses through which we're looking and feeling and talking? Like, you know, I'm blown away by forgiveness. Whenever I witness forgiveness, like, it blows me away, because my heart knows that that's the right direction, because, you know, inside myself I know an eye for an eye just makes the world blind, you know. And yes, you know, Dylan Roof is still alive, and that's an interesting opportunity, you know. So now we get to actually have a conversation with someone who confessed to planning to kill himself at the end of this whole thing, but he didn't have in a way that he didn't go through with that part of the plan. Instead, he fled, you know. So, I mean, and, you know, like, we might never know the real answers, you know, and I think the difference between someone being alive at the end of a shooting and someone being, you know, killing themselves is that, like, it actually is an opportunity to test society, you know. Like, how do we look at this person who is still alive, and, you know, and how do we equate all lives? You know, what is equanimity if not, you know, what, like, this is an opportunity to really say all lives matter, you know. And I mean, like, I went to something that was really powerful that Peter Yarrow of Peter, Paul, and Mary put together, about loving the bully, because a lot of bullies were bullied themselves, you know. And so, like, you know, we're all in this, you know. I mean, there's such a huge opportunity to really, you know, put down our guard and to just lead with compassion and forgiveness, and then, you know, like, first seek to understand before we seek to be understood, you know. And I feel like that's why I'm so impressed with forgiveness first models, you know. You know, so, I mean, and it's also great to, like, honor everyone's opinion, because we all come from a different set of lenses. So, I mean, Thomas, like, you've got a different set of life experiences than I've got, and that's amazing. And then I look at this show, and I'm like, here we are, three white guys, and what does that mean? And like, are we representative enough? And what does that mean? I mean, and like, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just like we got to get better at asking the hard questions, and I think that's what I'm really grateful for with this. So like, I don't come to the table with tremendous answers. I don't know how to be with my kids. I don't have a roadmap for that. I don't have a recommendation to other fathers out there right now. All I say is get to your present self, be your true self, touch in with that guy, that father, that being, and say what's supposed to be said from that place. And that's going to be a different thing from every father's mouth right now. I think the only thing I would say is say something, like honor this moment and give this moment an opportunity to have it be part of what fatherhood means. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because saying nothing is still saying something.
I agree with you. I mean, because the first sort of logical question that a kid might ask when they hear, or see that this 21-year-old white guy killed 9 black people in a church, the question is why? Why would he do that? So that's a hugely teachable moment. Why would someone do that? Why would somebody go through some sort of chain of events, thoughts, beliefs, whatever in his mind to plan that out, and beyond thinking that that murder is okay, or justified in some way, thinking that he is somehow justified or called upon, to kill, to sort of infiltrate, a black church as a white guy, and then kill people, so that I think that can open up a discussion with kids, and again, as Erica is saying, there's no roadmap for how that discussion goes or script for it, but it can open up a discussion about, well, there's this thing that exists in the world, and particularly in our country, and particularly because of the history that our country has with black people. There's this thing called racism.
Well,
and we never got rid of it. It's still there.
Well, one thing. So me personally, I never really grew up experiencing racism at all. Like, I didn't have very many black people in my school, and then the ones that were there fit in. They weren't really picked on. You didn't. I never saw any people being like, "Oh, look at that," blank, blankety blank, right? I don't know. They were popular kids. I never dealt with it. It wasn't until I started working in the automotive industry, that I really experienced racism, but not necessarily from white to black, but the opposite, black to white. And I actually was the victim of that, and got told I was going to be taken outside and have my ass whooped for I literally just made a comment to a conversation that 2 black people were having that I didn't realize was a private conversation, because they were having it openly in the break room. And I was just, my comment did not provoke any sort of violence whatsoever, and that's the comment I had. And I was told later that the people that were talking were both extremely racist, and that white people, they do not take kindly to white people talking to them. And I thought that was just crazy. But then my girlfriend teaches at an inner city community or school that is primarily African American students, and she teaches kindergarten, and her students come to school being told, don't listen to white people, and because she's the teacher, the parents literally have to say, well, you have to listen to her, but any other white people you don't have to listen to. So, like, that's the first sense of racism I ever felt is almost like the exact opposite of what you'd think. You know, like growing up being told, "Oh, don't trust black people. Don't don't like them, or they are this and that and the other." I never experienced that from myself or any of the people I associated with. But then, as soon as I'm kind of put in a situation where they're the majority, it seems like there's quite a bit of racism coming from them towards me in these situations. So, part of me, I'm just kind of like, why do they hate me? What the heck did I ever do?
Well, Chris, you didn't personally, obviously do anything, but
right.
I think it helps to try to think about what a definition of racism, or the way we define it, really is. And if you define racism as the systemic oppression of one group of people, so not just individual personal interaction, but a whole system of laws and customs and practices and ways of dealing with things out there and quietly under the table that keep a certain group of people down and deny them opportunity and treat them as different and less than another group, then what comes back at us from black people isn't really racism. It can be ugly, it can be unpleasant, it can be horrible to deal with, and all of that. But we as white people are not being oppressed. We're not being denied. We're not being treated as the underclass. So, but that doesn't mean that what you experienced was in any way justifiable or in any way good. I mean, that's really bad what you experienced. It's not a good human experience to have, and no amount of however the people who treated you that way feel they were treated, it doesn't justify their behavior, or disrespect towards you. Everybody should ideally respect everybody.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I guess I just, I feel like some of the challenges is like when we try to put anything in any given category or bucket, where is the ism and where isn't the ism, I feel like, that's the other messiness and that's the other opportunity here, when I was a kid in 3rd grade, and I remember it like it was yesterday, I moved into this community in Rocky Point, Long Island, where you'd think it would be okay to be Jewish, but apparently it wasn't. And so I'm sitting in class, and we were talking about holidays or something like that, and all of a sudden I raise my hand and say that I'm about to celebrate Hanukkah, and I'm the only one, and then for some reason there was this chant of Eric is Jewish, Eric is Jewish, in the middle of my class, and here's like why I have goose pimples to this day. Mrs. Bierman was my 3rd grade teacher, and her eyes shifted, and she said, "And so am I." And it was like a game changer. It was like, holy cow, I was all alone until Mrs. Bierman said, "And so am I." And so I feel like, oh boy.
Oh, we lose him?
It happens. We lose Eric at the
yeah.
moment of what he's saying, but that standing up for other people, what his teacher did for him, is so important. In so many different kinds of situations, and I think that also, just to pick up a thread on what he's saying, is that he wouldn't have known that his classmates felt that way or had some kind of prejudice against Jews until the holiday thing came up, and then suddenly this ugliness, it's like it was there, it was under the surface, but then something triggered it and brought it out.
Yeah, you back here? Do you want to finish up on that? You might have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, now I
There?
lost your video.
Um,
Are you there? Can you unmute yourself, though? Let me see if I can go in here and do it. Well, maybe not. But at any rate, hopefully we'll get him back here in a minute. Did you want to...
How about now?
Yes.
Yeah, now.
Yay.
Sorry.
So, I mean, I did overhear what you guys were saying, and I think it's totally true, is that, like, yes, like, so many of these things are sort of invisible until they're visible. So, it took that moment to know that sentiment was there. And I would imagine that it probably shocked some of the people, some of the third graders who were saying what they were saying, to hear that come out of their own mouths. So, like, and I guess that's the thing, is that, like, when we think that we've lived our lives, without experiencing racism, I think that's what's so shocking about this right now, is that, like, we all get to admit that we haven't lived our lives without, even if we haven't personally experienced racism, it's still here enough to provoke this sort of event.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's what I'm getting at, is that, like, let's get out of, like, categorization and, calling things isms or whatever. Let's just love people. Let's just, say, like, how is that for you? You're, like, we have 8 billion people on this planet with tons of different, lenses. And we will never know what anyone's experience is on this planet unless we ask them. And I think that's what I love about this show. Like, this group of, we're sharing stories that we've never shared with each other before, at this very pivotal time in our world. And it's pretty unbelievable that we have our fingertips on this technology to be part of the conversation. Here I am in Ithaca, New York, and there's, like, we're having a national conversation in our living rooms,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm still saddened, and, like, I'm still in the throes of the emotions of what happened at that photograph today, and what it means to be a father, because, like, I was raised with the idea, and, like, I'm gonna get a little emotional, is, like, with the idea of, like, leave the world better than when you found it. And like, I think, when our kids ask us these questions of why, maybe it's okay that we don't have answers. Maybe that's the point here, is that, like, when it comes to physics or math or balancing equations or all these other things that you can look up on Google and you can find an answer for, this still doesn't have an answer. Even if we know why Dylan did what he did, it's still not enough. It doesn't satisfy the true, like, why is this energy still here? So, like, I feel like it's just important to allow a question mark to remain a question mark, and I think this also questions our role as fathers, because fathers and men are typically problem solvers, right? We solve problems. That's what dads do. That's what we do best, supposedly. And here I am saying I don't know, and that is the best I can come up with, at this time. I don't know, and I'll spend the rest of my life figuring that out with each other, like with my kids. So I guess that's what I got.
I love that emotion that you're feeling in that comment. It's just powerful. Yeah, because we don't know, do we? I mean, it's just all about doing the best job that we can every day, and waking up and saying, okay, what is our objective for each day? Well, to make it better than the last, right? Or like I love what you said there, Eric, about making this moment or leaving today better than the
Right.
way we found it, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a in Judaism you have this thing called Tikkun Olam, and that's the Hebrew, but in English it means repair the world. So Jews are taught, in terms of religious teaching, that we're supposed to go out and repair the world. And there are really two concepts fused into one in that. One is that the world needs repairing. That when you look at the world, you're not supposed to see it as perfect. You're not supposed to say, oh, everything's just, so beachy here. It's like, no, there are problems in the world. There's stuff out there that's broken that needs to be fixed. And then the second thing that's fused with the first is you have a responsibility to do something about it. I mean, so I'm not saying that's a uniquely Jewish thing to do, but that's the phrase, and that I think that concept that the world needs fixing, and that all of us, from any religion, from any color, from anything, have a responsibility to try to go out there and do what we can to make it better is really important.
Mm-hmm. One thing, I watched that Disney movie, that Inside Out,
Mm-hmm.
and it's showing all these different emotions. What a cute kids! For one, I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was cute, kidsy, but I loved how it talked about emotions and the fact that there are these different emotions within you, and it's like it's okay to feel sad. And that's kind of the premise I got towards the end of the movie, is like it's okay to feel sad. The one thing that you really feel in the movie when you're watching is like you're supposed to be happy all the time, and it's like, wait a minute. The one thing that the character learns is like, oh, there are times for sadness. The actual sadness can bring you more happiness and more joy. So understanding that, and I think in a lot of our kids' movies, it's that life is so perfect, and it's marriage is so perfect, and these false expectations for what reality is, and so then we get into this real reality, and we go, man, I'm having these feelings.
Well, now Chris is frozen, but
Mm.
I think that popular culture does give us these templates and these sets of expectations and these ways of looking at the world. Like, I mean, if you watch enough TV or whatever, adventure movies, the frame is always the world is a really bad, dangerous place. There are psychotic people out there who want to get you and kill you and plot against you. And thank God for all the guys out there with all the guns and the helicopters and the planes and all that, because you need them to save you from evil. But what if all that popular culture is being paid for by the guys who make the guns and the planes and the helicopters and all of that, so that they can keep making that stuff and get people to pay for it? It's just a thought, but,
Oh, you want to talk lobbyists? Oh, I can go on all day about that.
And I think that's the opportunity here. Like, here we are, and because we are living in this transparent, world, everything is real time, so, now, I mean, getting back to the Walmart versus the government thing, like Walmart can literally pull, eBay can pull, images of the Confederate flag, on a just because it's the right thing to do, and then NPR can say, oh, well, is it the right thing to do for business, or are they just doing the right thing? And like, we might never know the answers to those questions, but we are here in real time, and we're seeing how long it takes to get the Confederate flag out of government buildings, and it's going to be really interesting to time track it. It's almost like, and it's sort of a somewhat related thing, but when Hurricane Katrina happened, we actually saw how long it took, for government to react. And, the longer it took, the more it turned into cultural political racism,
Yeah.
because what would have happened, if it were a more white, city that were, afflicted by that hurricane. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just, I mean, we're not invisible anymore. Like, everyone's opinion is going to matter in this one. So I'm just I'm
You're right,
amazed.
Eric, and politicians are so reluctant now to take any sort of risk to do anything meaningful. When the civil rights legislation was finally passed in the 1960s with President Johnson, the Democrats lost the South. The Democrats still don't win in southern states. I mean, the South used to love the Democrats because Mr. Lincoln was a Republican. And Johnson and, the legislators, in doing the right thing, they said, well, you know what? This could change. I'm sure they had it in there. This could change the whole electoral landscape of the country. But you know what? We can't not do this. And so that's a huge shift. All those red states that you see as red states used to be blue states because they liked the Democrats because they hated the Republicans. And so sometimes, I mean, I wish, I know it's idealism, but I wish more politicians would stand up and do the right thing and you'd say, you know what? I'm only going to be here for 2 years or 4 years or 6 or whatever. And eventually I'm going to get not reelected, and move on to doing something else. I might as well do the right thing while I'm here.
Well, I think that's the big opportunity is like, I mean, I want to wake up working myself out of a job, like I want to live into the game changer movement. And I mean, my kids said this the other day, and they're such old souls and they're amazing. And they're like, kind of getting back to the, the Judaism, understanding is that like, my kids are like, Daddy, you have a job because violent video games exist, like, and they, they sort of nailed it, and sort of like we, when we get our calling to stand up and truly make a stand and take action for what our beliefs and what our internal guidance system is asking of us, are we willing to courageously, boldly go in a direction that isn't popular, and thank God for Abraham Lincoln, who was willing to embrace his enemies in order to have the right thing happen, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough of history to really know how that all went down, but I'm amazed at what happened. On the flip side, and this I just think needs to be brought up, is that here we are in 2015 thinking that these leftist liberal thoughts are happening. These things like gay rights are coming from the left and becoming mainstream. Like, this is not a left issue. This is a human issue in the center, and I think it's just a really important thing to be about and to say with authority, like, what it means to have universal human rights. That's not a left or right situation. That's not a Republican or Democratic way of thinking. That's a human way of thinking, and it supersedes any red or blue state, So I that's just my humble opinion, but it's coming from a very guided space. So
you're kind of talking about that interview that I was listening to on the WTF with this Mark Maron, if I can say his name.
Don't call him a moron on this.
But he's interviewing Obama, and Obama was talking about the political gridlock that we've seen. That we, the people, don't trust the government to do the things that we feel that they should be doing. And therefore now you have these parties just locking each other up. Nothing's getting done. And it's because there's been a disconnect in our trust with the politicians. Politicians are supposed to be here for us, but are they? Are they sitting there with these lobbyists? And he was talking about his feeling on lobbyists and how that kind of corrupts the system as well. So how can we improve, our government systems and get them polling us as a society? Get them up to speed on technology for one. This has become a very, very social world that we can all comment whatever we're feeling at that moment. But is there a way that our political system can kind of tap into that and start using this type of thing to start creating policy, as opposed to some guy just sitting in an office that's kind of this is the way I view politicians now, is they're in an office, they have no connection with what's really going on in America. The only thing they're hearing about or knowing about what's going on is what this guy's like, hey, if you pass this bill, we'll make sure you get reelected next year. Because we'll make sure you have enough money that you can campaign broadly enough to cover that. So I think a lot of that is, there's some major changes that need to be made on how we interact with our government before we can even start to set it up in a way that works. At least works better than what we have right now. So,
yeah.
Agreed across the board then on that comment. It's getting kind of late. This episode, we started a little late and we're going a little late, but I want to give everybody one last chance to make a comment on this tough topic, and then if anybody's got anything else to add, then we'll wrap it up. So, Thomas, Eric, you guys set?
I'm set. I think
okay.
It's a great conversation.
Well, yeah, I guess I just, I really thank you, Chris, for, bringing it up, calling the question, and I'm so grateful that we have the platform that we have, and I feel like our job as fathers is changing, and we are sharing what it means to be in that question, and I feel like this episode was more about questions than answers, and I feel like that's okay. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate having the forum to ask questions without necessarily needing answers right away.
Well, awesome. Yeah, thank you, Eric, and Thomas, you as well, for coming on the show and sharing your perspectives. And if you like what you have watched and heard, please comment below and let us know what your thoughts are. That's kind of the whole idea of this show, is to create some conversations with other dads out there, to say, to let us know what you're seeing and what you're feeling from your perspective, right? Your set of lenses. So with that, thank you, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Thanks.